Like any specific experience that you still remember and anything that you want to share with the aspirants?
Because it had very negatively affected me. I almost cried when I
Right.
was roaming around that campus. And in that moment, I knew that I would not be converting this in college.
Hi guys, welcome to Edge, a podcast series by iQuanta. As I promised, हम अपने podcast पे ऐसे guests को बुलाने वाले थे who have successfully completed their MBA and have landed on their dream companies. Well, this episode would help you a lot with your useful insights and give you an edge to your IIM dream. So today at our podcast, we have Arunabh with us. Arunabh, who graduated from IIM Calcutta, is currently placed at McKinsey Company. So let us dive into to know what Arunabh has done for all these past years and how did he land at McKinsey. So how are you, Arunabh? How's life right now?
It's good. I think life's going good.
Alright.
So just to start from the beginning, like I went to a boarding school. I went to Dehradun. It was an all-boys boarding school. Then I did my undergraduation from SRCC, where I studied BCom honors. I didn't sit for placements, which is an interesting story which we'll talk about. I took the year off thereafter to prepare for CAT, and then I was lucky to get into IIM Calcutta. But as I was entering, COVID hit. Right when I was going for my interviews, that's when COVID started happening. So my first few months, my first 2 semesters actually happened online. But then we got to go to college. My reason for doing an MBA was mostly to shift and get a job in marketing. And I was lucky. I got an internship with Nestle. But eventually, as my MBA ended, I pivoted to consulting. And now I've been with McKinsey for about a year and a half.
So Arunabh, now that you have told us that you somehow managed to get into IIM Calcutta, right? Can you tell us a little about how did you manage your preparation and what extra effort did you put in for your profile and stuff like that? So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So so my journey of getting into CAT and MBA in general is very unconventional. My father is a civil servant, so he wanted me to get into the civil services and give UPSC. So right after college, I started preparing for UPSC, started going to one of these coaching centers in Karol Bagh. But then I realized that maybe MBA is something I want to explore. So I started going for these conventional CAT coaching classes. So I went for the coaching. So there were two things I feel like that made the difference for me. I went through the entire syllabus, and that took a few months. The first thing is that I had a very strong partner that I studied CAT with from SRCC. He was my junior. And what we did religiously is that we did mocks every day. For the last month and a half, we left the syllabus behind. I remember we used to wake up, take a mock, and then analyze it together for about an hour and a half and do the same in the evening. That's all I did. And I think that is what sort of made me get to IIM Calcutta eventually. It was this support system, this sounding board, and the strategy of taking mocks and analyzing them. Because I feel like I learned a lot more about test taking and the syllabus itself from taking these.
And a little about your interview experience. How was it?
Yeah. So I went for a lot of interviews. Some I'd rather not talk about. Horrible, absolutely horrible. But my interview at IIM Calcutta was one of the most interesting. I went there and there were 3 panelists. One was an alum and 2 professors from IIM Calcutta. One of them eventually happened to teach us history when I went there. And I was prepared and I was a little nervous that a lot of these questions are going to be about the academics that I had done at SRCC. But to my surprise, it didn't start there at all. And all we talked about were my hobbies. And I'm really into writing, and I'm a sports person. I like swimming. So I feel about 70 to 75% of my conversation was about all of these things. And very interestingly, it was like a very normal conversation. And then they also went and they did take my mark sheet. And there was one subject I remember that I hadn't scored well in. And then they asked me why. And then I told them that, at that point of time, maybe because of some extracurriculars that I was involved in college, I couldn't attend those classes. But then he's like, hey, let's ask a question over there. And he did. He asked me a question in that particular subject. And I remember I stumbled a little bit. But again, I feel like what I did well there is that I owned up to it. I tried my best, and I'm like, I believe that this is the answer, but it's been a while. And I feel like it went well. And he was satisfied with that. Just seeing that hey, maybe, I do not know this. But yeah. So, and it was also, my interview was at Indian Habitat Center in Delhi. It was a really lovely day, I remember. And I just remember having a good time right before and after. And I remember everyone around me was feeling very pressured. But always remembered that like an interview, for most of it, is just a conversation amongst a few people. And if you treat it like that, you're able to bring your best self to the table. And do not get pressures. Because I saw a few people around me who broke into a sweat. And they didn't do that well, even though they had scores higher than mine. I feel like they didn't get through because of taking all this extra pressure.
Right.
Yeah.
So communicating effectively your profile is the key, right, in an interview, and not just academics.
Yeah, and also just to add in here, right, every person brings in a very different story and journey.
Correct.
You do not need to judge yourself basis what you think is the best. Just tell your own true self and talk about it, because there's another human on the other side of the table too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So Arunabh, what was on your mind while you were preparing for CAT? Obviously, इतने stress and chaos के बीच में कि CAT crack करना है, B school convert करना है. Did you have in mind कि अगर ये नहीं हुआ तो I might do this? A plan B if you had.
So that's a good question. And I actually went through all these pressures, and not going to lie, there's a period between when the CAT results come out and right before when the interview start happening. And I wasn't too sure. And as everyone, and I'm sure everyone goes through these thoughts, I was in this negative headspace where I thought, I don't know what next. Actually, right after CAT, in January, before the interview started, I started preparing and giving job interviews.
Okay.
And I actually started doing a job, and I did it for 15-20 days.
Okay.
Because I was that unsure. So this is my plan B. And it wouldn't have been ideal.
Okay.
But if it wouldn't have happened, as I said, I'd go again. I'd give CAT again.
Right.
And if not, I would give it again.
Great.
And I would not and another story here is that there are great colleges again, right? But for some odd reason, when I was filling the CAT form, and CAT and one of the other exams are the only 2 exams I gave. And the only colleges I filled, there were only 6 colleges I ended up filling because of some glitch when I was filling the form.
Okay.
So there were 6 colleges out of which I got calls for 4 or 5. Yeah.
Amazing.
So I got extremely lucky.
Right.
But yeah, I went through all the negative thoughts that comes to everyone's head, and it got so bad that I started acting on it and I started applying for jobs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So Arunabh, that you mentioned that you got calls from 4 to 5 other colleges as well.
Yeah.
How was your interview experience in there? Any specific experience that you still remember, and anything that you want to share with the aspirants?
Yeah, so definitely. So the IIM Calcutta interview was as I talked about,
right.
It went and it was a great experience, but there was also a horror story there. It's another great college that I went for an interview, and it was in Delhi, and I remember that day. And as I said, a lot of luck comes into place. And for some reason, the panelist I got that day was either not in a good mood or was just in general, just being very, I would say wasn't being too pleasant.
Okay.
And as it started, so we had the written assessment test,
Correct.
which he was also a part of. It was actually a funny thing. The faculty who I'm talking about here, he started napping while that was happening. So we were writing it, and he started snoring.
Oh my God.
So I was like, okay, interesting. Regardless, he went ahead. And then I went in the interview room, and he was one of the 2 people.
Okay.
While one of the faculty, we were talking about academics and everything else. The other person started grilling me a lot on things that were not academic related, etc. Just to create a very strong pressured
environment, right?
And I caved into that pressure. And at one point, I couldn't continue and I couldn't speak.
Right.
And that was a very tough. And that moment, I knew that I would not be converting this in college. And I had other interviews lined up right after that too.
Right.
So just to get out of that phase, but I remember when I walked out of the interview room, I forgot my file and I went for a walk, and then I took the next hour and a half just taking in what had happened, because it had very negatively affected me. I almost cried.
Right.
And I was roaming around that campus.
Correct.
And I talked to my parents and I talked to my friends and I told them, and the next 3-4 days again, just to pick myself up from that bad experience, to put myself out there for another interview,
right.
was tough. but it was very important to have the right people around you.
Correct.
And this happens again with placements as well. You see that there's multiple, in some cases, interviews that you go through, and immediately you get to know if you made it or not.
Right.
So let's say you had your dream company
Correct.
that you wanted to go for, and you have just been rejected.
Right.
And in 10 minutes, your next interview starts.
Correct.
To just compose yourself,
Yeah.
pick up the pieces and
yourself
go
up for
again.
that. Right.
I remember, so again in IIM Calcutta, right? Like one of my friends, he wanted to go for this interview and it didn't work out. And it happened again. But I remember we used to stand outside his room. और जैसे ही खत्म होता था, we used to just like prep him and be like, "No, you're gonna do this." And we used to hype him up because we knew how tough it was, and it took like a huge toll on some people too.
Correct.
And this one very close friend of mine, unfortunately, was just not having a bad day, and that day happened to be a placement day. The few hours, like the 2-3 hours after several rejections, and how it was just tough, but like that's something you pick up and learn, and it's very important to have the right people.
Correct.
Around you then.
Yeah. So your interview day might not be a very good day for you.
Yeah.
Like it might be a lot pressuring
And
stuff.
there's a lot of things that are not in your control.
Correct.
I believe there are most things that are not in your control.
in your control,
So never take it personally.
Right.
Yeah. But all at the same time, bring your best self. Like whatever's in your control, do that. Everything else, you can't control, so it's okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. So now that you've managed to crack the interview as well, right? What was your feeling while you were entering IIM Calcutta? What was on your mind? What's gonna happen and stuff like that?
So I entered IIM Calcutta on a Zoom call.
Okay.
Our orientation happened on Zoom.
Right.
I was regardless. It was. I remember I got goosebumps because they had like this drone shot of the entire campus, and I was like, I can't believe it that I made it. And all my batchmates, of course, you're all there, but you know, it was a little not what we expected. The first time I entered IIM Calcutta was actually in January 2020, I believe. I hope I've gotten the year right. And this was after placements, after summer placements. So now all the pressure was off, and we entered, and I entered with all my friends. All my online friends, which I hadn't seen in person.
Right.
And it was breathtaking. So IIM Calcutta is known as the campus of lakes. It has 7 lakes, and it is green and it is lush.
Wow.
It's another world altogether. So it took me a while to take it all in, to meet my friends, and then it was great from there on. Okay.
Great. Okay. So because you did your undergraduation from SRCC and then you went to IIM Calcutta. So how did you find the shift from Delhi to Calcutta? How was it? The competitive energy, the atmosphere. How did you feel about it?
Yeah. So the college that like IIM Calcutta, when I was entering it, it of course had a much more diverse crowd because SRCC has only 2 courses we offer, which are very sort of similar to each other, which are economics and BCom honors.
Right.
And here, there are people from all different academic backgrounds, a lot of engineers.
Correct.
And engineers from all the top IITs. We had a lot of lawyers, some doctors. So this environment, initially, it was very intimidating for me.
Right.
I was like, I don't know if I'm like good enough. And I had seen some of these people, some of these folks during my CAT prep phase.
Right.
But then when I eventually went on to meet them, it was great. Shifting from Delhi to Calcutta is definitely, the cities are very different. But another thing that because of the circumstances, because of COVID and where my campus is located, most of my time was spent within the campus and not the city.
Okay.
So unfortunately, I didn't get to experience much of the city. But so when I was in a boarding school, it was like a closed educational setup. It was very similar to that IIM Calcutta, and that was a great experience.
Okay. So what was more challenging to you? Acing entrance, that means acing CAT, or entering MBA, that means, following all the MBA patterns and everything, or entering corporate? What do you find the most difficult out of these 3 phases of your life?
All right. So out of these 3 different phases, I feel like I can't put them on the same scale and say that, hey, X was more challenging than Y.
Right.
All of them had different. So during CAT, it was a lot about preparing in silence and just a lot of stress management. it was a different strategy altogether. And there's a lot, when I went into the college, it was, as I said, these are all very, very similar in a way, but very different in terms of what needed to be done.
Correct. Yeah.
But there's a common theme here, which I'd say
Right.
is, and I feel like which is very important, is you do incremental small efforts over a long period of time to get where you want, and you correct these as you go forward.
Right.
Two very similar phases I had in life was one when I was preparing for CAT. I remember the last month and a half before, and when I was entering my final placements, the month and a half before entering placements. Very similar in terms of how I approached and scheduled my entire day. It was very regimented, it was very disciplined, but that did not mean that I did not make time for fun. It did not mean that I didn't get enough sleep. I just made sure that there was enough time for everything, and I was following it very religiously.
Okay. So now that you have mentioned about your journey at SRCC and at IIM Calcutta, how was it like? How did you find it similar to what you're doing right now? Or, how's life at corporate? How are you feeling at it? How's it?
So, this is something I've thought a lot about actually. That what is it that you learn in these academic institutions that you actually take to your job?
Right.
I feel like there is an overlap, and not just these institutions, also CAT, right? In terms of what I do right now, a lot of it needs a lot of sort of quantitative and qualitative analysis. In terms of you have to go through a lot of data sets. Like it's either written, or you have to make models and interpret and get insights from them.
Right.
I wouldn't say necessarily exactly what we were studying in all these places are what we use now.
Right.
But just to have this confidence in the numbers and how you, especially, and VARC too, right? If there's a data sort of, there's a huge amount of data that you have to go through, and just picking up what's important, which we learn in VARC, is something that really helps.
Okay.
Right.
Yes.
So there's definitely, and not just in terms of what we study academically translates into like job skills, but how you're trained to approach them is what you take.
Right. So all the skills, all the skill development that you did under your MBA, that did also help you a lot in your corporate life as
definitely.
well.
And not just how it was structured, but also the interactions I had with my professors and with my classmates. I said it's very diverse.
Yeah, not just the hard skills, but soft skills as well.
Definitely.
Yes. Okay. So before you mentioned that you did your internship in marketing and you are at McKinsey and Company right now, right? So why was this a change here? Like from marketing to consulting, that's like a huge change for a candidate. So why was it? And
that's an interesting question, and that's something that like I think about, and it's very close to me. So at heart, I still believe I'm a marketer, and most of the work I've done. So I worked with Red Bull for about 1.5 years, 2 years, and then I worked with Nestle in my summer internship. And what I still believe that where my interests lie are in like brand management, being the custodian of a brand, and especially in the FMCG space.
Correct.
Right. And this is where like I feel like I can truly do well too. Now coming to why I switched. So as a consultant, so how you approach a problem as a consultant, especially let's say if I were to take the path of a brand manager, is that sometimes a brand manager and the day-to-days of a brand manager are very nuanced and very detailed in a particular brand.
Okay.
But as a consultant, you can take a bird's eye view on things.
Okay.
So I can look at a broader strategy of like 100 products and directly interact with CEOs and CXOs and like multiple brand managers.
Okay.
So just from a strategy point of view, from a just understanding the course and like how the entire portfolio of the company works, a consultant would have more access to that.
Okay.
And even in consulting, I have the option of working in consumer.
Right.
And I feel like this approach would still sit better. Another difference I saw in a marketing company versus a consulting company is that a consulting company is a little faster.
Okay.
How we approach things and how we do things. It's very if you think something's the answer, go test it, get it done, and we're giving you all the resources.
Right.
Similarly, I feel like FMCG companies are a little hierarchical in nature and things move a little slower there. Yeah.
Okay. So this was one thing, like you wanted to look at broader aspect to things, and that's why you went to consultancy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How is it working for you, right? Like what would have been if like you continued marketing and like would not have switched consultancy.
Yeah.
So do you think like the scenarios would have been like so different, or what do you think about it?
So definitely, I talked to my friends who went into marketing, different companies and the leading companies, and I am jealous of the work they're doing and getting to interact with so many folks. A lot of them actually sit on like scooters around in like rural places in these states, and they get to interact with distributors, which I find very exciting.
Okay.
But as a consultant, I have been on a few projects. I've been, I think, on 4 to 5 different projects, and no 2 of them have been same.
Okay.
For example, and this one project was very interesting. It actually involved me waking up at 4:30 a.m. and going to sabzi mandis.
Okay.
To figure out a problem for a big player. And I've also worked in a chemical plant.
Right.
Even though I come from BCom background, and it was very interesting just learning. And I've worked a lot in IT too, so it's been tough. It's challenging, but I enjoy it so thoroughly. And what I really enjoy is like bringing impact.
Correct.
Like truly, at the end of the day, when you see that, like, I know the days and hours can be tough, and it's challenging coming up to speed. And to confidently present yourself in front of a client who's been in the industry for so long, you really need to have some strong background and like bring some strong skills. But at the end of the day, when you say that, hey, we worked in something together for a few months, and look at how much value we've been able to create.
Correct.
That is one of the most beautiful things. And I feel like I'm a person who really enjoys this. And as a consultant, I'm able to do it. Like I'm able to like work on really tough problems. Some of them work out, some of them don't. But the process, it just teaches you so much.
Right.
They say that 1 year in consulting is equal to like 4 years of normal work experience, and it's true. And we also age as fast.
Wow. 1 year into consulting and you're 4 years older.
I'm definitely 4 years older.
Okay. So now that you're talking about impact, creating an impact, one very last question that would put a great impact on all the aspirants who would be watching this would be your message to the aspirants. Like, what do you suggest them as to with their preparation or with choosing their specialization? Because again, you were not even sure whether you would be continuing with marketing. You ultimately switched to consulting then, right? So what would be your suggestion to these aspirants right now about their specializations and choosing a great MBA college and everything?
Alright.
Yeah.
So, and I talk about this a lot, and I've been through it myself. And never short sell yourself is what I believe. You never settle.
Right.
It might take some time, but you never settle. You always, know what you're worth, and you keep fighting for it. That's in terms of the decisions you make and what you where you decide to go.
Right.
Number 2 is be open to everything, because currently it might be possible that the information you possess and the decisions you make basis them might not be complete.
Right.
So going forward, when you interact and you get more information, maybe then you're more equipped.
Correct.
Of making the correct decision for yourself.
Right.
And do not go into like an MBA college with a bias. Just be open and see everything. And thirdly, just working hard wherever you are, regardless. Right. And it has its own merit. It has its own fun.
Right.
But yeah, so these few things.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. So Arunabh, we did tell our students about you, that you are coming onto our podcast, and many had so many questions for you. Okay, so I hope you won't mind addressing them. Okay. So one of the very unique questions that I found was, how is IIM Calcutta different from all other IIMs? Like, I don't know whether it has a specific answer to it or not, but what's your viewpoint on it? Yeah.
So IIM Calcutta is in this place called Joka, and we call ourselves Jokers. It's I don't know if it's like we should, but we do.
Okay.
Back when I was making the decision, and let's say I had converted IIM Ahmedabad and Calcutta, it's very likely that I would have gone to Ahmedabad because of multiple reasons, and it's everyone is at that point would have made that decision.
Correct.
But today, having gone through IIM Calcutta, and I don't say this lightly, and just because I'm an alum of IIM Calcutta, and this is what I tell my brother too, who's in the CAT preparation phase.
Okay.
I would ask him to choose IIM Calcutta.
Okay.
And this is because, in addition to being rigorous, and model just to like give you exactly the skills that you need to go to take to the corporate world. It is very people centric.
Right.
IIM Calcutta, we have this motto where we say that you leave no one behind, and I haven't seen anything as strong, like a stronger sense of community, a fraternity anywhere else. And I really appreciate this coming from a boarding school.
Correct.
So one example of that is placements, be it summer placements or be it final placements. None of us celebrates. It's a 5-day process. None of us celebrates at all in a very disciplined manner till like the last person gets placed. That is when we start celebrating, because as I said, at Joka we leave no one behind.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so great. So heartwarming. Okay. And the other question was, what are the pros and cons of marketing and consultancy?
Okay.
Yeah, one of the aspirant is like confused between them. So he wants to know what are the pros and cons of marketing and consultancy.
Okay. So let's start with marketing. The pros are that you get to work with really exciting brands you've possibly grown up with, right?
Right.
Like, let's say you get to work with a Munch or a Kit Kat,
Correct.
maybe a Bonvita, and that's very exciting. You've grown up with brands, right? Like Parle G, for example.
Correct. Johnson's Baby.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's a great example.
Yeah.
So, and you get to really apply your creative skills. And just to see like on the ground, like let's say tomorrow you're working with Kurkure.
Correct.
You've grown up eating Kurkure, right?
Right.
And now you're deciding what product, what campaigns, what are we shaping that brand. That's just very exciting.
Okay.
In terms of cons, it might be a little slow in terms of career growth.
Right.
The day-to-days might be a little slower, and I feel like we go in thinking that we're going to do a lot of brand strategy work,
Right.
but a lot of it might be stakeholder and project management. Of course, in addition to brand strategy work,
Right.
but it's a lot about dealing with different stakeholders and
Correct.
different agencies. So that example, another pro is that like one of my friends gets to work with all these actors and all for different campaigns.
Correct.
So you get that sort of exposure. Coming to consulting. So coming to the pros of consulting, number one would be, and a lot of us, and something that attracted me too, was the lifestyle.
Okay.
Coming straight out of college and this being my first job, I really appreciate and enjoy these little perks we get as consultants, right? We get to stay in nice hotels, we get to travel around a lot.
Correct.
Right. Secondly, the kind of problems we solve, right? And at McKinsey and maybe at other firms, whenever we interact with our, let's say, our peers, we have something called problem solving sessions.
Right.
What that means is that like, hey, let's get together and see let's debottleneck this problem. Let's see that like how we can like, what's going to be the next step.
Okay.
Right. So you just develop this very important skill, which is structured thinking.
Right.
So that you know what exactly is that you're trying to solve, and then what it requires for that problem to be solved.
Okay.
And it's something that really helps you in all different aspects of life.
Right.
Right. Thirdly would be the exposure that you get. So as I said, like I've worked in 4 to 5 different industries. What this also means is that I understand how these different industries work, the nuances, without going too deep in them. And this also enables me to get that extra information.
Right.
So consulting also acts as a finishing school. Now that I know that this is how these different kinds of jobs work, because I worked in these industries.
Correct.
If I decide to switch out of consulting, I can do that because now I've worked in so many things.
Right.
Right. Fourthly, I would say just it trains you, and consulting is an intellectually hard job, but at the same time it teaches you how to manage different stakeholders.
Correct.
Stress management.
Right.
Right. There are days where the entire team were up for like hours and hours on end trying to solve a problem, and these are skills that really you learn over the few years. Fifth would be, I feel like the compensation and growth is faster here,
Right.
but that's also because we put in more hours, and so yes, the compensation and perk it grows at a significantly higher rate compared to some other fields. About the cons, the hours are tough.
Okay.
Yeah. It on average, yeah, the hours can be a little much sometimes. The traveling can be a little tough. On most weeks for us are like we wake up early Monday morning, take a flight, and then we fly back on a
Right.
Friday evening.
Right.
And we're living out of like suitcases. We're in hotels.
Correct.
That does take a toll. Thirdly, I would say, yeah, as I said, like sometimes the stress gets to you, right? Some days when it's like the third, fourth day when you haven't slept well and like you're trying to solve something, and the client wants answers and there's pressure from everywhere,
Right.
it can get
Right.
a little tough. And then obviously the flexibility of like spending time with like family
Correct.
and like giving time to your hobbies, etc. That takes a back seat.
Okay.
But I would like, yeah, definitely do this again because it trains me. I feel like it's making me unlock potential.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So the last question,
Yes.
and according to this comment, it states that it's the most important question. Did you enjoy your life
That's
with all of this?
that is an interesting question.
Right.
So obviously, like, if we go way back, I wasn't. That's a tough question. I have been happy throughout. There's been different phases,
Right.
and there have been different things at every point, and there have been challenges associated. But I've really enjoyed SRCC. I've enjoyed my
Yeah.
friends, spending time with them at IIM Calcutta, and I enjoy my job right now.
Right
Of
now
course,
as well.
it gets tough some days.
Yeah.
But I do. I
Okay.
truly do. And yeah, I'm really grateful for like where I am now.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess that's a wrap. Okay. Thank you so much, Arunabh, for all these insights.
course,
I
yes.
hope all these aspirants find this useful.